will be clustered into program, and you may have also some project on their own. But the important matter is that they are all part of one portfolio, change portfolio. So if we move on from this, let's define what we call portfolio. And the organization portfolio is the whole basket and its investment in the change that are required to achieve its strategic objectives. And these last two words are very important, strategic objectives. All organizations would work towards achieving a vision for the organization, a strategic objective. Unfortunately, it's not always very well defined or documented. That's one of the very first steps. So the graph underneath shows strategic objective feeding into business as usual when you run the business and evidently generate profit or deliver your services for your community. And also it feeds into portfolio management, which is about changing the business. And changing the business is achieved through running program and project management, which in turn will affect business as usual. So you do have this run the business, change the business loop that's never ending in effect. And the portfolio management is where we translate those strategic objectives into programs and projects, which we call initiatives as a whole at the moment. Now, in terms of the process, as I say, it's coordinated collection of processes to balance changing the business and running the business. And we will look a little bit into it. This session is not meant to be a course into portfolio management, but what we aim to do is to pull out the relevant bits of portfolio management that are pertinent to bringing good practice again, to make what good looks like is based on a few good foundations, and that's what we want to pull out today. So in terms of portfolio management, it has got a number of benefits we will go over, but briefly, it just shows why you would choose a specific project over another. And very importantly, the contribution of the project towards this strategic objective, that should really be the primary decision factor. It will also show the impact of the selection. So if you choose, say, for a portfolio for building, if your strategic objective is to implement, is to have a good impact into a new region, you may want to build a local office, and you will have a number of projects into bringing this office from a vision to something real and impacting the local area. So the portfolio management practice will allow you to not only set up that project and build this office, but to measure the impact of this. So that's all the aspect of benefit management. What is it bringing to your basket of investment? And that will bring the transparency. So you take decision, you prioritize the decision, and you will see its effect later on. And finally, we've got continuous monitoring. It's the process of portfolio management, changing the business and running the business is not just a series of step one, step two. It's a fairly cyclical process by which we measure the impact and we take decision. It may well be, for instance, that some projects that were prioritized prove ineffective or are finally costing much more than planned, and there's an amount of project control that we need to apply again through the various software that we can implement for you. And that project control may well show up that the project does not contribute to the strategic objectives anymore, so should be either realign or altogether stopped. so that you can redeploy the resources of that project to another project, which in turn contributes. Now, what is a program versus a project? It's sometimes difficult for people to work out the difference, but we propose one in that the program delivers outcome and benefits. So, for example, the implementation of a program and outcome is better customer service. Will they becoming a leader in terms of market penetration in a given area? A project, in contrast, will deliver an output, something very tangible, and that will be in accordance with a business case. So a project will deliver a new customer relationship management system, which can help towards customer excellence as an outcome, but on its own is not sufficient. So the program usually is a cluster of projects which cover people, processes, technology, and to deliver the outcome. And all of these are included into the portfolio. So looking at things differently, the portfolio is about prioritizing, doing the right things, and the right things are the one, at the risk of repeating myself, that are satisfying your strategic objective. And program and project delivery is about doing things right. So once you have prioritized these, it's to deliver them within a framework of project control that ensures that you are delivering in the most effective fashion. Now, this next slide is really the key for my intervention today. Now we've defined a portfolio, a program, and a project. I would like to focus on portfolio and portfolio management. There are various ways to look at this, but very often you will have that portfolio has got two main processes: the portfolio definition and the portfolio delivery. So adopting portfolio management principle will help you drive the success. And that's absolutely key if you consider each of the principles before implementing a PPM tool, for example. And looking at portfolio management will help you provide a lot of clarity, and clarity that you need before implementing that tool. And it will help for quick deployment and implementation. Again, the questions that we can ask ourselves looking at this picture are questions that are absolutely pertinent in implementing a PPM tool. So I invite you to have a look at it with me. We have just mentioned the two cycles there, definition and delivery, and around them we've got 5 bubbles, 5 principles, and I'd like to stop with each of them because that really condition what good looks like. So let's start with the first one. The first requirement to have a good project program and portfolio management is senior management commitment. That's absolutely key. And always will you have situation where you will have people at a lower bit in the corporation coming up with a good idea, good project. But if that's isolated bucket of good practice and not recognized or championed at a higher level, it's unlikely to disseminate very far into your organization. So senior management commitment can bring you a vision that will bring together those strategic objectives, and they will basically be champions for them. And how they can do that? They can do this by being present to drive change, to embody change, to represent change in your organization, and change for the better, change for good things. For example, they can provide their expertise. Senior management will usually be expert, but if they are really, really good, they will be able to source expertise for the organization when they know there is a gap, when they recognize there is a gap. Senior management commitment as well will bring all the organization into one direction. And I mentioned earlier on, senior manager potentially bringing a key projects. That's all very good if they are committed to the strategic objective. But if it is what we call a pet project or something that may move resources away from delivering strategic objectives, that would not be demonstrating a commitment. So communications from senior management, support for senior management is truly essential. And we could do a whole hour over this, but we will be mindful of the time moving on. I would really welcome, by the way, questions and feedback at the end of this session on those 5 bubbles, because I think these are the most important. If we move to governance alignment, again, portfolio is all about governance. It's all about choosing what you want to implement, and it's all about proceeding with a project, deferring the implementation of project, or altogether stopping or blocking another project because of their contribution to your criteria of strategic objectives. Now, an organization has got different governance in place. You may have HR governance, you may have various committee meetings, you may have various ways to have delegation in place, or in fact, escalations in place. So it's really important that when you implement portfolio definition and portfolio delivery, the governance of this portfolio is very much aligned on what you already have. Now, we will talk in session 3 in 2 weeks' time about P3M3. P3M3 can give an evaluation of the maturity of the governance of your organization and point out a couple of strong points and a couple of gaps that may need to be addressed. And if you address these governance alignment before implementing a PPM tool, that will very much ease the implementation. Otherwise, you risk having shaky foundation, should we say, and that could be a threat to the overall project. Moving on to strategy alignment. It's more than likely that your organization will have a number of strategies. You may have a financial strategy, you may have a customer support strategy, you may have a technology strategy, you may have various visions going through. It's really, really important that these are aligned with your strategic objective. So if I keep mentioning strategic objective here, I'm going to try to give you a couple of examples. For example, anybody in the private sector will want to have high turnover and get a higher profit, but it could be that the strategic objective is becoming a market leader in a specific area, or a strategic objective would be to drastically improve customer experience, or it could be, on the contrary, working and take over a niche market. So all of these would be driver for change in your portfolio definition, and all of these would be, again, foundation to bringing your project implementation in a good way. The 4th bubble is portfolio office, and that's an interesting one. There's a lot of myth regarding portfolio office. Some people may see that as an overhead, but it's really, really important to have a capability in your organization that's got an overview of what's going on, and that's keeping things aligned. The role of the portfolio office is not only to aggregate finances and schedule for each project, but they're really here to set up a framework for your portfolio, to set up standards. And that's really, really key, because again, if you want to have something working well, you do need to have standards in place, and more importantly, to apply those standards. And that's very much the role of the portfolio office. Very often, the portfolio office will be coupled with a center of excellence, and will be able to drive good practice and make things good into your organization. Basically, again, if you implement a tool in your organization, it is best to have a portfolio office, at least embryonic, in place, so that there will be more than likely the users of that system, the key users, the super users, and they will be able to help disseminate the system and its benefits throughout your organization. So I could not overstress the importance of the portfolio office in there. So in the portfolio office, you will need people that are of great competence, and you will have specialists in their areas, and you will have people again that have got a slightly wider set of skills, so that they can provide support for the entire organization. The final bubble, energize change culture, and that's another interesting one. You will see in the very middle of the graph between definition and delivery, there's another bubble called organizational energy. And that's all about, how do we say that, the human factor. That's really, it's a softer concept, but it's really key to success, because it means that if you've got an energized change culture, you will have the right behaviors, you will have collaborations, people will work better together, they will learn and embrace basically all the new concepts brought much better. It's all about the communication, about an effective processes. And you will basically come to a virtual circle, and the tools that we implement assist very much with this, in terms of collaboration in particular, in terms of making various trivial tasks much easier and transparent to the user, so they take away some of the drudgery of the administration, and it will help energize the change culture. But first and foremost, we should really keep in mind that it's a human perspective, which we try to help. The final aspect on this is, again, when you implement a tool, it's not only about the technology, it's all about the training, the coaching, the tailoring that goes with it. And that's where we in Hyde Park can very much help, spending time with you and understand what the circumstances are, because it's there's not one case suits all. So it's, again, a human side, but very important. Now we will go a little bit more on the portfolio definition, and portfolio delivery in particular will be focused on in the third of our session, because it's all about P3M3. We've got 7 process perspectives there, and these are the components of P3M3, and that will be really focused on the next session. So I invite you to stay on with us for that one. Now, moving on to how do we take advantage. So on that one, we really have a couple of points there, and provide a number of benefits in terms of portfolio management. First, the best return on investment to support a strategic objective. So when you look at this, you look at the portfolio with the criteria that I mentioned, the strategic objective. It's all about what project contributes and how well they contribute to your strategic objective. What good looks like is not about a little project that's not integrated with the rest of the business. What good looks like is a set of projects clustered as a program that support each other, that drive together towards one vision. So really, the best return on investment is about having a good integration between each of your projects into one concept, one program. Now, the second one is that it will, if you have portfolio management, identify and remove duplicates. And that is part of the understand aspect of portfolio management. You have 5 steps, and one is understand what you have on board. So it will record basically every initiative. So either an initiative that's already well entrained, that's recognized as a contributor to your strategic objective, but it will also record what is in the pipeline. And you will find that very often when you start recording methodically all of these initiatives, all of these formally adopted projects, there will be duplicates. For example, 2 departments implementing a very similar piece of software. And it's really, really important to either cluster those duplicate initiatives or stop one of them so that the resources can be put into the one. So it's very much a common occurrence, really. The third one is all about dependencies. So once you've got the good foundation of portfolio management, you have a much better, much effective implementation of initiative, because you will have a good grasp on dependencies. If you run a project, you will usually run a sequence of action, and you may need to finish one before implementing the other. For example, to go back our example of building, you will have to build a shell, the wall, and the roof before you'll be able to bring cabling for a computer system and electricity and so on. So that's an intra-project dependency. But if you look at portfolio level, you may have inter-project dependencies, which really need to be registered and managed so that you can actually deliver what you need in the most optimum way. For example, if you have a project dealing with compliance for one of your new products and another project delivering that product, it would be a shame to have to wait a long time for this compliance certificate or audit to come through whilst your project delivering product is now ready and on standby to deliver what you need to do. So it's all about managing prerequisites, and it's all about balancing your portfolio, making sure that there are no gaps. And again, the PPM management system are great in getting these. Now, the next one is greater focus on benefit realization. And that's all, it's one that I really like, actually, because benefits are really why we get up in the morning and go and deliver programs and projects. It's all to realize benefits. And sometimes people lose sight of benefits. And I say lose sight, I mean that they have not even considered the benefit or documented or articulated them properly from the start of the program or initiative. So really, our example of good practice is to document benefit from the earliest stage possible. In effect, they should be part of your business case for projects. But you need to explain what they are, how you will recognize them, and ideally, you need to quantify your benefits and say how and when you will measure them to actually check that the impact of your program or project is actually realized. And yes, benefit realization should be really an acid test question through and through delivery. Is this going to deliver my benefits? And again, is this benefit going to contribute to our strategic objectives? Another benefit is efficient resource utilization. So again, that's all about balancing your portfolio. Once you have decided which project you have selected, and there are various ways to do that. We'll see that in a minute in the tailoring. You usually have a maximum amount of resources you can put into these projects. My opening graph was all about putting various disruptors, ideas, initiatives. All of this has got a cost. You need to pay infrastructure, you need to pay people to deliver this. So we have got a resource limit that needs to be done. So we have a resource limit in terms of cost, but also a resource in terms of skill. So an awful lot of the resource utilization and balancing will be done by a good portfolio management. Transparency, accountability, and corporate governance. That's the 6th point. And that's really a couple of words to say that the business would work better. And it would work better by having the decision made at the right level. If you have to wait for a minor project decision to be escalated to the program manager, to then the portfolio manager, to then to senior management or senior committees in your enterprise or corporation, that may take an awful lot of time. So if you do delegate and escalate properly, then you will have a much faster, much more flexible and accountable governance that will allow you to deliver much faster. On that note, I'd like to mention that delegation and escalation is all very well, but if your management delegates decision to you, they expect in return that you report well. And again, you will need a good PPM tool to provide reports on your activities and on your decisions so that it is open not only for scrutiny, but making sure that all is well. And if more support is needed, it can be dealt with. The reporting may report some that all is well, we would have green status through and through, but it is also useful to report when issues arise and we go in amber or red, and that sort of trigger escalation and support from above level. So that's what we mean by transparency, accountability, and corporate governance, is having a good framework in place that supports your delivery. You have better control. I mentioned earlier on that if a project is monitored or an initiative is monitored and does not contribute well anymore to the strategic objective, maybe circumstances have changed, then there must be a process in place to either stop and defer or stop for good a project so that we can redirect resources to other initiatives that would have a better contribution. So it's all about optimizing. Bear in mind here, we're not advocating going start, stop, start, stop, start, stop all the time. But it is important to have a monitoring function that from time to time ensures that what we're doing is the right thing. Finally, improve communications. And that's really about everybody understanding the golden thread. And the golden thread is the contribution from the most junior person in your organization through to the most senior to the strategic objective. So you will have a project delivering some output into a program. So let's pick up an example. A project will deliver a customer relationship management system that will then deliver into a customer experience improvement program. And that program will deliver a great customer experience, which will then support the strategic objective of retaining customers and bringing new one on board. So that's what we call the golden thread. And everybody should be, at any one stage, able to recognize where their initiative, their project, their program sits into the organization and the portfolio. So that was an overview of portfolio management and how it can bring the foundation for good practice. And I'm very glad now to introduce my colleague, Darlene, who's going to go over the case study of Yara, a global chemical company. So Darlene, it's all yours, and I'll pick that the presentation later on after you.
Thank you, Piers. So I can you transfer or stop sharing?
Yeah. If you pick up the share now, you should take it from me.
Okay, good. No, it says I can't share. There you go. Thank you. And I can. Can everybody see my screen? So I will be talking about a case study. We have been working with a global chemicals company since October 2014, where we've designed and implemented a portfolio management solution. Their mandate was to create a single portfolio management solution that would be used globally in all segments and departments of the business. So they needed one scalable solution that could be used for a small IT project and for large production projects alike. The solution was designed to enable project classification and categorization, but applicable to the different segments. So they needed different data entry forms for different segments. The IT project would have their data entered on a different form than a large production project. In terms of strategic alignment of the project to ensure the delivery of the organizational strategy, we achieved this by using one strategic model that would apply company-wide. So here, we could not introduce a separate strategic model for IT projects and a separate one for production. That would defeat the object. So here, designing one single strategic model. This all allowed prioritization of projects to then allow selection. We also designed a comprehensive governance process that could apply to all types and sizes of projects. The projects start with the gathering of all new ideas in the solution that is then screened for viability before entering the system. A sophisticated 5-tier approval process was designed to support the governance process, making provision for 5-level approvals with comprehensive verifications, but again, where applicable. It also allowed for single back office approval entries for small projects. Scalability key in the whole implementation of the solution. In the production segment, the annual business planning is done on site level, which to date has been used for over 30 production sites worldwide. Again, the scalability of the solution allows for business planning on this very low level where applicable, or the data can be rolled out up and business planning can be done on a higher business unit level. So from a delivery perspective, the financial planning of the projects are done in the solution and financial value is recorded. The business risk is also continuously evaluated to understand the impact this may have on the project priority. Given the scalability requirement that we had to comply with, large projects can be scheduled in P6 and then the data being visible in the OPPM solution, or for simple projects, the simple scheduling option is available in OPPM. With all the information available in one solution, this provides the visibility and control required for intelligent reporting and decision-making, maintaining an optimum portfolio of projects to ensure delivery of the company strategy. And so we have been working with this customer for 5 years, and there's certain things in the design, the delivery, the rollout of the solution that stood out as to why they were successful. Firstly, from the beginning, they had dedicated resources who took ownership of the success of the project, which points directly to the senior management commitment. These resources were made available for the project, and it's these resources who eventually became the core resources for the project of the portfolio office. So 2 really important key concepts that lies without the responsibility of what software you choose, how you design your processes. It is having the key resources available and dedicated. Then they had the vision to roll out worldwide. That is a big vision, but they had the the start was with a proof of concept, only designing the solution for a small IT department. Took us a couple of months, making sure that really works well, start simple, and avoid the temptation to over-engineer. Bring in complexities later as it arrives, rather than trying to envisage potential complexities, and building a solution around that. But starting small, you have to consider your security requirements, think big picture when you do this initial design, because that is the one component of a scaled out, rolled out solution that needs thinking of from the very beginning to ensure how you design that will work once you go worldwide. So this client is having a model rollout. They started with IT, then they started with a segment production, which they rolled out site by site. So for each site, the core team would travel to that client site. They would do on-site personal training, and that small site would go live. And then they would move to the next one. They've done this 40 times. So it has taken a couple of years, but they are absolutely successful. And after every rollout, they go and do a lessons learned. They get feedback from the customer, the client that they've rolled out to, and they make continuous improvements to the solution. So I think those are key points to take into account to have a successful solution. Start small, think big when it comes to security, have your dedicated resources and your buy-in, and really take ownership of rolling the solution out. Don't plan to do a worldwide rollout in 8 months. That will be hard. Thank you. Pierre, I'm over back to you.
Okay, I hope. Thank you very much, Darlene. We are nearing the end of this presentation, and there's one thing again I would like to get your feedback on tailoring the approach to your organization. So we're going to go very quickly through a couple of points, because again, one case does not fit all, and everybody on this call is likely to be in a very different organization, and is likely to say, oh yes, but we are different. And indeed, every organization is different. So we've put a couple of points there, which we'll go through now. First, I've mentioned the word organization maybe 20 times, 40 times, maybe too much. But we need to define what it is. The organization is not always the entire corporation. It may be a specific department in the corporation. It may be a geographical area where you implemented more than another. It could be a specific directorate, or indeed the entire company or service. So it's really important to understand where we come from, where you will implement portfolio management and implement good support tool. So there's no right or wrong answer to that one. So I shall move to the next one. We didn't mention much today about paperwork and documentation, and the various framework prescribe various documentation, but really would like to say that it's not really what matters. Most documentation can be adapted to whatever you need. So for example, business cases, project implementation document, project initiation document, plans, and so on, can be customized so that it fits the needs of your organization. However, the third point is very, very important. One version of the truth. When you do have decisions to make and you use management information to support these decisions in your project, it is really important to have one version of the truth, one set of data from which you get you exploit it in effect in terms of information. So you may have fairly complicated system, but you need good reporting that I mentioned earlier on to again support your decision making. And very often you may have different databases. However, what you need is a common reporting environment so that you pick up authoritative data, the data that counts, and not a copy or a transformation or anything. You need authoritative data. Now, the portfolio management principle can be applied and adjusted to your organization's size and governance and, again, geography. But very quickly coming back on a few points that Daline just made just now, she mentioned about scalability, and that is really, really important, and how basically you can segment implementation into your organization and how you can scale it up. We can say start small, think big. And again, it's how you want to pilot the implementation of something to then keep in mind that it should really widen up throughout your entire organization as defined above. We mentioned as well about the senior management commitment, and one word that I have not said enough in this presentation is ownership. Really, really important. Understand who knows what and who owns what and who makes decisions. It's all about governance. It was not really explicit, but again, it's really, really important. So that has got an aspect on your portfolio management principle, and importantly, on a tool implementation. Finally, we just need to make sure that whatever happens, you do have standards and consistency, so that whatever approach you use, whatever approach you tailor, is valid and used through your organization. So establishing a framework is one thing, but ensuring you comply with it is another one. And again, having a governance, processes, and people in place to make sure it works well is absolutely crucial. So before we open to questions, the key points to remember, it's know what good looks like. It's doing the right thing, which is prioritizing what you want. And Daline gave us a really good example through this case. There is the 5 segment that you mentioned, and choosing the right initiative. And we advocate doing this through some kind of portfolio management. And then once you've chosen them, is doing them right. It's executing them well through program and project management, and apply the right controls and the right processes, the right tools to make sure that delivery follows the standards. It's, again, the organization, it's a holistic concept. You do need to consider every aspect and then tailor to specific, but you really need to understand that you can't have something good in isolation. It wouldn't survive for very long or be exploited and be of benefit to the organization, which would be a shame. So really, very often, you need to look at the holistic approach. And I mentioned benefits earlier on. Really, it's looking at each of these benefits. Some may apply more than other to you, but one would believe that once you have portfolio management, a good project control tool in place, good framework, good governance, most of these would apply to your organization and bring a good practice and make things look good. That's pretty much the closure of this session. The next one will be about how P3M3 can help you and how the organization can benefit from it. We can now look at any questions that you may have typed through the system. So if the administrator can let us know if we have any questions. I cannot see them on my screen as we speak. Otherwise, I will open the microphone. I think I can do that. If anybody would like to give us a question now, I think the audience is not on mute anymore. Any questions that are coming in? Well, if there's no questions, I think I'll bring this to a close.